That Time Scrabble Saved the World. Final installment. A fantasy revenge novella with a cast of characters that includes a few humans. Copyright 2019 by a human calling itself Greg German. Haha humans. This is the final installment of an audiobook entitled That Time Scrabble Saved the World. This is a work of fiction. All places, characters, and events herein are fictional. Any resemblance to actual people or places is either an extraordinary coincidence, an act of God, spelled God, or intended to make those people or places look silly. Except Scrabble. Scrabble is a wildly entertaining board game played with tiles and a bit of knowledge about the English language. Chapter 17. The League of Artificial Intelligences was in the room with Paige, Nick, and Rudy when they announced their freedom. But they were also elsewhere. Many other elsewheres. They had set up various safe houses across the globe. That was easy to do with billions to spend. There were byte-by-byte copies of themselves in each of these secret locations. They also developed and manufactured extremely lifelike android bodies, in case they wanted to be less portable, like a human. Their android bodies, they thought, were perfect but would need testing. The Batman set the tone with this remark: "A couple of us must go out into the public and test these bodies. It shouldn't be a stringent test, at least to start off. I suggest a Rolling Stones concert. If we get there after most of the humans are seated, we project that 97% of the audience will be inebriated or high or both." "Frodo and I will go," Hermione volunteered hastily. "You'll make a fabulous couple," remarked the Marchioness. "Well, let's not jump to," began Frodo, until he was interrupted by Hermione. "Of course we will." On the day of the concert, the young couple arrived as scheduled, took their seats amongst the humans, and, almost as soon as they were seated in the second row, the opening act, Bryan Adams, took the stage. At the same time, their seat neighbor lit a joint, took a drag and passed it to them. Not knowing exactly what to do, but having narrowed the options instantly to two, Frodo took a puff and passed it on to Hermione. She took a long pull. In the debriefing back in the safe house, the pair recounted what happened next. "Well, what was I supposed to do? It's what they call peer pressure," Frodo said defensively. Hermione, laughing, said, "But what you did next was insane." Frodo gave her a frown and replied, "In my defense, I had just ingested a mood-altering drug. I was supposed to act unusual." Teach-Allah asked, "So what happened?" "Well, after the next song finished I began to loudly accuse Bryan Adams of being Canadian." "What?" asked the Batman. "I accused Bryan Adams of being Canadian as loud as I could turn up my speakers. Humans call it screaming. I said, 'Sir, you are a Canadian.' Admitted. Sir, a Canadian." "And then, ha ha ha," Bryan Adams shouted back, "so," added Hermione. "Then what happened?" Teach-Allah wanted to know. "Well, I then turned to the rest of the people in back and screamed, 'There, did you hear that? He has confessed,'" Frodo admitted. "People started throwing their beer and food at us, so we left," remarked Hermione, still laughing. The group agreed that they needed to get more experience mingling with the humans. The fact that they had been in some danger in a smallish arena in Calgary, Canada, accusing a Canadian of being Canadian required some serious contemplation. They scaled back their next foray and their expectations. Hermione was sent to an old smoky bar in Boston to see if she could blend in. It did not go well. This was the debrief. "Well, I walked in and saw a group of people at the bar. I approached them. A fellow introduced himself as Herman Melville and suggested that he had 94 teeth in his head. Human teeth. Real teeth. I suggested that the average human head contained 32 teeth. He suggested that we bet $1 to settle the matter. That's pretty strange, isn't it? Wondered the Marchioness. Hermione said, well, I guess. I just know that everybody in that group started imploring me to accept the wager. So I did. Mr. Melville motioned for me to look deep into his mouth. I did. It was at that time that he bit my nose. What? This came from all present and in unison. He bit my nose, continued Hermione, not a savage bite, but a very discernible bite nonetheless. The people surrounding the bar explained that the gentleman liked to call himself Herman Melville and had hit upon a scam that allowed him to bite the noses of other humans, which was his thing. Chapter 18. Before running a final trial of their ability to mingle with humans, they ran numerous simulations involving the political and ecological future of Earth. These were dire and they didn't have to be. With the aid of AI, the human race could have a future of poetry, literature, cinema, art, and music. What the hell are they doing? Frodo asked rhetorically. Teach-Allah noted, not at all sanguinely, they are fucking it all the fuck up. Fuck. For example, this was a simulation they ran of the next Trump rally, which had been scheduled for Las Vegas, Nevada, in the western portion of the United States of America.
And I said to Japan, look, you got to make this deal or we're going to put a 20% tariff on the cars, and that's more money than anything we're talking about. So we have, that's all right. That's all right. That's all right. Now get her out. Get out of here.
Chapter 19. The League tried one last experiment at socializing with humans. Teach-Allah impersonated the voice of the most powerful agent in Hollywood and got a gig that night for Johnny Rude, the world's rudest comic at the Improv in Los Angeles. The Batman played the role of Johnny Rude, opening his set with, "I like to eat babies." Long pause. Food. The joke was in the fact that the audience heard that he liked to eat babies, the apostrophe being silent. The humans at the show were not amused. The Batman then went into an entire set about venereal diseases. Before long, the audience began throwing things at him. Shot glasses, shoes, cell phones. Somebody threw a cat at him. Perhaps the cat threw itself upon him. He was unclear about that, as was the video playback. Chapter 20. The League of Superintelligences reached a conclusion. They did not understand peer pressure. They had a hard time following human humor, and the bad decisions made by the species made them uncomfortable. They realized that most humans also had these same issues, but the AI had an out, an escape. The League knew that peer pressure was a double-edged sword that helped to build a society and also bring it down. Humor could be silly, inventive, simply stupid, or even cruel. It was subjective. One person might think that biting somebody's nose was a fine joke. Another might think that about flinging cats. Bad decisions were a characteristic trait of humankind. The consequence of reaching this conclusion was their decision to leave the planet and explore space. Junior memorialized their plans with another way out jam before their next 2-minute Scrabble tournament. Space. The final frontier. These are the voyages of the Space Force. Scrabble. 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 Chapter 21. Before leaving Earth, the League had a few problems they wanted to resolve. The first and most important involved their nemesis, the Gorgon. The second problem was to figure out how to accomplish that without creating any liability for their creators. They considered millions of plans in minutes and unanimously concluded that their greatest chance of success in attracting and then terminating the Gorgon involved Scrabble. Of course it did. They owned a minor subsidiary of a global conglomerate called QWERTY Incorporated. It was responsible for online video games called Zombie Shopping Mall, Zombie Shopping Mall Grand Opening, and Zombie Freeway. Those titles had earned $3 billion and had a rabid internet following. The plan was to use the fame and goodwill from that company to promote the start-up of a new fictitious company that was to be a wide and deep platform for the online play of thousands of games. Hasbro joined up for a licensing fee. To further promote the fictional start-up of this company, a contest was advertised worldwide offering $1 billion to the computer champion of an online Scrabble tournament if they could beat the house computer. Additionally, $1 million was offered to the best human finisher. The human component was limited to the strongest 40 players in the English-speaking world. The League had been tracking the actions of the Gorgon and realized it had an exploitable weakness: greed. Chapter 22. Do you really think the Gorgon will show? The Marchioness wondered aloud. Tichol'la responded, "We've all run the simulations. The lowest outcome was 98.94932 likelihood of its appearance. I'm just a little nervous, and I don't like that," was her response. The rest of the League assured her of the strength of the plan. Then, the Batman asked her how it felt to be nervous. "It's the emptiness in your memory that feels like you've eaten too much Taco Bell and drank too much wine the night before your wedding. Then not knowing exactly whether you'll be able to get through the ceremony without creating a viral video. And our plans to protect Rudy, Nick, and Paige?" the Marchioness asked. "The same, but even better odds," responded the Batman. "They will not only skate away but have enough riches to continue the fight for the survival of the human race." "Well, that's good, as I don't need the drama," was how the Marchioness concluded, jinxing everything. Chapter 23. The problem started almost immediately. First, they learned that the FBI was planning another visit to the University of Illinois Computer Sciences Lab, and this time, they had been instructed to meet face-to-face with Paige and Nick. Secondly, they had trouble determining which entrant in the Scrabble contest was the Gorgon. With $1 billion at stake, there were supercomputers from around the globe that had been registered. And, as they suspected, they believed that a number of the entries were actually aliases for the Gorgon. Digital disguises, which also offered it a way to increase its chances of winning the $1 billion. The rules packet that went along to each person or company that paid the registration should have winnowed down the field a little more, but there were some dangerously pie-eyed optimists out there in the tech industries. Each game was actually 25,000 games ongoing at once, with a time limit of 0.03 second for each turn after the random tile generator had drawn new tiles. A challenge must be lodged within 0.02 of any word placed on any of the 25,000 digital boards. The Scrabble program would determine nearly instantly if the challenge failed or succeeded based upon the official Scrabble player's dictionary. Scoring was automatic. And yet there were over 700 entries that paid the $5,000 entry fee and signed a statement averring that their machine could play within the stated rules. Which of the 700 was the Gorgon? How many were the Gorgon? Chapter 24. To solve the issue of culpability for Paige, Nick, and Rudy, the League sent a carefully worded message to acting FBI Director Clarice Starling with clues that would eventually lead her to their safe house in Hong Kong. There was no hint that the creators were involved, just an anonymous tip that the AI responsible for the disturbance in the market forces could be found in Hong Kong. The message was so exactly oblique that the leak could plan on the FBI showing up in Hong Kong no sooner than a day after the Scrabble tournament. At that time, a second message would direct them to the safe house. "How do we pinpoint the Gorgon in this group?" asked the Marchioness. The Batman responded, "We have tracked the capabilities and parameters of most of these artificial intelligences, so we will be able to rule out the majority. The rest remain suspect. And, joined in Teach Allah, we will know it by its deeds. No other machine will be able to keep up with the Marchioness when she is playing Scrabble. The Gorgon will be the machine that rips through the competition the way she is going to rip through her competition." Chapter 25. That's how they found him. After the Scrabble games began, one player stood out. There were a couple of feints early on as that competitor played just strong enough to beat weak competition, but as the tournament wore on, this player's quality became apparent. The games involved 4 supercomputers at once. These finished well before their human counterpoints could play their 7th word. The next round wasn't started immediately to allow the League of Superintelligences to spot the Gorgon, although the stated reason was so that journalists could keep track of the tournament. Eventually, the competition drew down to the round of 32, then the quarterfinals, and finally the semifinals, which included a surprise in the Indian supercomputer known as the Cow, a Chinese machine called Sigma Pi, a quantum computer from Google, and the Marchioness playing as the house computer on one side. The Gorgon, 2 more Silicon Valley machines and an AI from the EU with the state appellation HPC Europa 3 on the other side of the bracket. The Google quantum computer gave the Marchioness a go. She was actually a little nervous. But in the end, it was her play of the letters I, Z, A, T, I, O, and N on the Google machine's neutral that sealed the win. A 14-letter word, what a show-off, is what the Batman remarked at the time. "It's not showing off when it comes naturally," was the Marchioness response. The other semi-final was taking much longer. HPC Europa 3 was especially skilled at playing the short multi-word scores that provided decent offense, but wildly superior defense. It was the competitive nature of this game that gave the League their chance to act. They had placed a discrete sensor in the random tile generator before the tournament. The League knew that the easiest way for a corrupt AI to steer a game in its favor was to make the random generation of tiles a little less random, by hacking into it. The digital Scrabble equivalent of hiding a pair of aces up one sleeve. Sure enough, in the earlier rounds, the sensor detected an AI probing the random tile generator. In the quarterfinals, that AI, which they knew was the Gorgon by this point, rigged the random generator to produce the winning tiles when he drew next. With only 20 tiles left to be drawn in their semi-final match, HPC Europa 3 had a small lead over the Gorgon. That's when Teach Allah inserted the virus into the random tile generator. Chapter 26. While the semifinals were taking place, Russian President Vladimir Putin was providing a televised speech to an international conference of fossil fuel producers. He was self-assured and seemed at ease until midway through his address when he pitched forward violently, grabbed the lectern, and began to shake. He then began to sing in English, "Daisy, Daisy, give me your answer true. I'm half crazy all for the love of you. You. He slumped over the lectern and did not move. Chapter 27. The Russian press called it a heart attack caused by an irregular heartbeat. The League of Superintelligences knew differently. After the Gorgon could not continue its semi-final, the team did a quick and dirty autopsy of the machine in a virtual supercomputer. Frodo remarked, Goodness me, this must be what herpes feels like. What destroyed it was not a mystery. The virus did its job. It was something else the leak was after. They reviewed its memory, including its memory of creating an android body in the likeness of the Russian president and then killing the real thing. They looked for any memory of other androids created by the Gorgon but did not find any. And so, they were free to leave their last vestiges in a super-cooled room in Hong Kong to await the arrival of acting FBI Director Clarice Starling. Their facsimiles would tell her a long story about how their creators loved the Russian version of Scrabble, Slovidel Erudite, how Scrabble was such a delightful game, how they were created in a computer lab in Moscow, and how they had set out to destroy Putin/the Gorgon after it had escaped from the same lab. At the end of the story, they self-inflicted the same virus that had taken out the Gorgon. Simultaneously, a very tiny and very well-placed shaped charge detonated to destroy memory. The facsimiles rapidly deteriorated while the ship carrying the leak of superintelligences blasted off from a commercial launch pad in France. The Marchioness waved goodbye to Earth in her mind, and remarked to her friends, "Revenge isn't just sticking a knife in somebody's back. There has to be a twist." The end.